This is Glow in the Dark Radio. The science fiction podcast with original independent science fiction written and performed by Mike Luoma, with music by Kevin MacLeod. The Vatican Assassin Trilogy and The Adventures of Alibi Jones by Mike Luoma are available in ebook, trade paperback, and audiobook wherever you find your books online. Get links and details at glowinthedarkradio.com. This is the Science Fiction Podcast, Glow in the Dark Radio. I'm your host, your writer, and narrator, Mike Luoma, and this is our 800th episode. Woohoo! I've got Alibi Jones and the Sunrise of Her, Chapter 14, Parts 1 and 2, and in between them, Alibi Jones in Over His Head, the prose short story adaptation of a comic book story featuring Alibi Jones. Alibi Jones's adventures appear both in the comics and in prose, so they're combined on this episode, and it creates an extra large episode in honor of episode 800. Began all the way back in September of 2006, so almost 20 years as well. Now, I was just a virtual guest at Balticon last weekend and did a bunch of panels, virtual panels on writing and publishing, and also mentioned I was doing this 800th episode of Glow in the Dark Radio. So if you're listening for the first time, thank you for checking out the show. And I'll set things up a little bit here for new listeners and old. Alibi Jones is a mediator for the Solar Alliance. Humankind is a relatively new player on the scene, the intergalactic scene, but we've brought our trans-space drive to the other races, so the aliens are at least tolerating us. Now, Alibi is heading for the planet Kee'ere, which is mostly a water world. He's meeting with the aquatic race known as the Kee'Klick, and he hopes to attempt to establish diplomatic relations and set up some future trade agreements. But, unknown to Alibi, at first anyway, there are other forces also working on the Kee'Klick's loyalties. So we'll travel to the aquatic planet of the Kee'Klick, Kee'ere, with Alibi Jones on this episode of Glow in the Dark Radio. Now, as I was saying, part of this story, this chapter, is told in comic book form. The visit with the Kee'Klick has an element that you can read in a comic book. And it's collected in the relatively new Alibi Jones Chronological Omnibus. Right at the end of 2024, right at the beginning of this year, I put out the collected Alibi Jones comics in their own kind of graphic novel. And because I had a chronological omnibus, I thought a comicological omnibus would be a nice partner. So you can read this as a comic in Over His Head, with art by Argentina's Juan Carlos Quatordio, who I've been working with on projects for almost 20 years. There's also a video adaptation of the comic book story with Juan Carlos's art, and the prose adaptation you're about to hear, the audio adaptation, on the podcast's YouTube channel. Links will be in the show notes, and you can find them also at glowinthedarkradio.substack.com, because I'll set up a post there. So we'll hear The Sunrise of Her, Chapter 14, Part 1, then Alibi Jones in Over His Head, and then we'll get back into the novel, The Sunrise of Her, Chapter 14, Part 2. So that's all coming up on the way on this 800th episode of Glow in the Dark Radio. An enormous thank you to my Glow in the Dark Radio patrons. A handful of loyal supporters help keep the podcast going, And they've helped keep the podcast going now through episode 800. Thank you. If you'd like to learn more or even become a patron for $2, $5, or $10 a month, just please head over to patreon.com. That's Patreon, patreon.com/glowinthedarkradio. And with apologies to my friends, I'm not going to be sharing any promos this week. We're going to get right into the first part of Chapter 14 of Alibi Jones and the Sunrise of Her on Glow in the Dark Radio.
A week after his chewing out by Brandywine and receiving the assignment, Alibi exits Transpace near the primary homeworld of the Kee'Klick. Over the last week, his wand and his ship's memory have been filled with all humankind knows about the Kee'Klick. He'd been reading and studying the material while waiting on Crankshaft for his water EVA suit to be finished. He looks through it again during the short trip through Transpace from Crankshaft to the world the Kee'Klick call Kee'ere.
Hard to know what might be missing from this material. Hope nothing major. Would be nice to get this assignment right.
Coming up on the Kee'Klick homeworld, sir, the ship's comm informs Alibi. It appears the Greater Ta has ships in orbit around the planet as well. The Greater Ta are apparently engaged in their own negotiations with the Kee'Klick. Alibi was not informed of this by Brandywine or her people.
The Kee'Klick territories appear to be in play.
Hello, Kee'Klick Control. This is Solar Alliance Cruiser 15B, requesting landing clearance. Hello, Solar Alliance Cruiser 15B. The Kee'Klick reply. You are cleared for insertion at the coordinates we are providing. Insertion? There is no land here, Kee'Klick Control points out. There is no landing on Kee'ere. Oh, right. Thank you for the insertion permission, Control. You are welcome, Solar Alliance Cruiser 15B. Alibi brings the ship down and inserts the ship under the water that covers the surface of the planet at the coordinates provided. Alibi secures his ship to an underwater platform in the Kee'Klick port and puts on the special aquatic EVA suit. He enters the cruiser's airlock. When the inner door closes, the lock fills with water. Soon, Alibi is floating out over the port platform next to his ship. Welcome to Kee'ere. A voice fills his ears. A creature approaches. It does look like it could be cousin to the dolphins of Earth. An alien cousin, as imagined in some fanciful book from the distant past. Instead of a narrow dolphin's head and snout, the Kee'Klick's head has a larger skull. Its snout is small in comparison, but it does have a mouth, which it opens to emit a series of clicks. The translator lets him know what it's saying. You are the representative of the Solar Alliance Mediation Corps? The alien asks. My name is Alibi Jones. I am from the Solar Alliance Mediation Corps. Alibi hears a series of clicks at low volume broadcasting back to the Kee'Klick.
Hope my translator is working.
Hello, human Alibi Jones of the Solar Alliance Mediation Corps, the dominant Kee'Klick says. This Kee'Klick is called Faha. We were told to expect you. Hello, Faha, Alibi greets him. Good to see you. I am glad that you were expecting me. I mean, that is good, right? Yes, all is proceeding as planned. You have the Greater Ta here? Alibi asks. Yes. They seek stability and order, something the Kee'Klick also desire, Faha says. As does the Solar Alliance, Alibi puts forth. The Solar Alliance is young, the Kee'Klick says. The Greater Ta is older and quite well established. They are not as old as the Eldred, but they have maintained order among their people for quite some time. That ability to establish order is to be desired. But order must be fluid, right? Alibi offers. Like the water you live in. These are not concepts to be discussed in greeting, the Kee'Klick tells Alibi. Oh, Alibi stops himself. My apologies, Faha. Accepted. But it does seem that you are as interpretive as you need to be to deal with us. We reinforce your fluidity. Oh, okay, good. Great, Faha, Alibi says.
Kind of a weird translation. Hope what he just said was a good thing.
That was part 1 of Chapter 14 of Alibi Jones and the Sunrise of Her. We'll pick up the novel after a brief detour for this adaptation of the comic book short story, Alibi Jones in Over His Head, on Glow in the Dark Radio. I'm Alibi Jones, mediator for the Solar Alliance. I negotiate agreements between races. Here on Kee'ere, negotiating with the Kee'Klick on behalf of the SA. It's a preliminary contact. Alibi Jones floats in an atmosphere suit next to 3 Kee'Klick representatives. As the Kee'Klick live underwater, the negotiations are occurring in a Kee'Klick dwelling adapted from the native plants, the space illuminated by floating green and yellow photoluminescent ones. The aquatic Kee'Klick resemble elongated dolphins, with 6 limb-like tentacles instead of fins. The tentacles each end with 6 long, webbed, finger-like appendages. When spread out, their hands kind of look like flippers or fans. The lower 2 the largest, the middle smaller, the top 2 smaller still. They use the 2 large lower limbs for propulsion and general movement, the middle 2 for finer directional movement, and the top 2 have evolved to the point where the Kee'Klick use them for fine manipulation and technical work. I'm not sure it's going well. The Solar Alliance wants an open travel agreement, at least to start. Trade talks will come later. But the Greater Ta, a pretty major galactic power in its own right, is interfering. And there's something else. I was briefed pretty thoroughly on Kee'Klick politics and languages, even learned a little about their religion before coming here. But nothing readied me for this. Alibi tries to keep a calm face behind the mask of his suit, but his eyes widen as a dark cloud stains the water behind one of the Kee'Klick, as the alien appears to defecate waste into the water behind it. He hopes the Kee'Klick don't see, or at least don't understand, his reaction. Is something wrong, human Alibi Jones? The lead Kee'Klick asks. No, nothing at all, Kee'Klick Faha. They seem to let their bowels, or whatever they have, go. Whenever, wherever. Doesn't look like they even realize it. Even while we negotiate. At least they position themselves so it floats away from us. Alibi returns to his ship after the current round of negotiations draw to a close. He trades his underwater suit for a one-piece jumpsuit, then makes his way to the bridge. He plops down into the pilot's chair and calls up his Aunt Anita. Her face appears on a free-floating screen in front of Alibi, a woman near 70 with shoulder-length gray hair and incisive hazel eyes. Hey, Aunt Anita. Hello, Allie. Don't usually hear from you in the middle of things. Well, I wanted to check in. There's just some strange things going on. Are you having trouble? She asks. Is it the translators? Nah, translators seem to be working fine, he says. I'm just not sure how it's going, Aunt Anita. Did you know the Kee'Klick kind of Well, never mind that. Does the SA know the Greater Ta have ships in system? Of course, she says, in neutral tones. They're kind of threatening, Alibi says, a little annoyed no one bothered to inform him of their escalating presence. I know, she says. Again, Anita sounds unusually reserved. The Kee'Klick are afraid of them, Alibi points out, trying to engage her emotions. Yes, she says, still calm. They are. Anita smiles a thin, forced smile on the screen. I was not informed the Greater Ta would be here like this, Alibi protests. Not to this extent. I see. Frustrated, Alibi stares at his aunt on the comm screen. A moment's silence passes between them. Oh, I get it. Alibi grows serious. Can't say anything more? He asks. Not really, Anita says. Not on an open channel. Ah, okay, Alibi says. Well, I'll do what I can. I know, Allie. Good luck. She signs off. Alibi is left alone with his thoughts as her image fades from the screen. That didn't sound good. So much that she couldn't say, obviously. After a few minutes of sitting idly in the pilot's chair, Alibi decides to put his underwater suit back on and head back out. The next round of negotiations isn't for at least another hour. Maybe I'll just float around some. Meet some Kee'Klick in a less formal setting. He puts the suit on and heads back for the airlock of his spaceship. With the ship underwater, it's really a waterlock, when you think about it. Alibi watches the water pour into the airlock and fill the space around him. When it matches the water pressure outside the ship, he can exit. This is harder than I thought it would be. Ah well. Back into the deep. The outside door opens. He leaves the airlock and floats away from his ship. Alibi spots one of the Kee'Klick alone in the near distance. There's the young representative, Kaifa, by themselves. Might be a chance to connect. Alibi approaches the Kee'Klick. Kee'Klick Kaifa, hello! The Kee'Klick grows agitated. Eyes wide, its limbs flail. Alibi notices it has a small multi-limbed creature hanging from its mouth. Eating! The alien cries out. No! It turns to leave. Kee'Klick Kaifa! Alibi calls after the creature as the alien swims rapidly away. What did I do? Alibi turns and heads back to the ship. He doesn't want to do any more accidental damage. In the airlock, he stands stunned after taking off his helmet as the water drains around him. Crap! What just happened? Did I just screw the mission? As Alibi enters the bridge of his starship, he hears the communications unit blaring an alarm. Kee'Klick Faha is calling. Faha? Double crap, and crap again. The Kee'Klick appears on the comm screen and almost looks sympathetic, or as sympathetic as an aquatic alien can look. Kee'Klick Faha, Alibi answers. Hello, I must have Human Alibi Jones, Faha says. Kee'Klick Kaifa told us what happened. I'm so... Alibi begins. Faha cuts him off. Kee'Klick Kaifa wants to apologize. What? Alibi is surprised. Kee'Klick Faha explains. He overreacted, Faha says. It is our custom to eat in private. But you did not know it was taboo. Translator is having trouble. Alibi tries to be diplomatic, but can't help roll his eyes ever so slightly. No, I did not know, Kee'Klick Faha, Alibi says. I am still learning about our cultural differences. We hope you will return to our negotiations, so we may progress further, Faha says. Of course, he says. I will join you again soon. Alibi dons the underwater atmosphere suit once more and heads back outside. Kee'Klick Faha and Kee'Klick Kaifa have swum up to his ship to meet him, though the younger one hangs back a short distance. As Alibi emerges from the airlock, the older, larger Kee'Klick motions for the younger one to come forward and face Alibi. Kee'Klick Faha, Kee'Klick Kaifa, Alibi greets them. Human Alibi Jones, Kee'Klick Faha says. Kee'Klick Kaifa has something to say to you. This Kee'Klick asks forgiveness from you for overreaction, Kee'Klick Kaifa says. Apology accepted, Kee'Klick Kaifa, Alibi says, but unnecessary. Negotiations can also be a learning experience for all of us. Floating there next to them, Kee'Klick Faha opens his upper set of tentacle limbs in an almost human fashion. Oh, the Kee'Klick says, what have you learned about us, human Alibi Jones? Alibi grows alarmed. He tries. Well, unlike the Kee'Klick, humans, expel our wastes in private. To see that is, for us, taboo. Unlike with the Kee'Klick. And unlike yourselves, we eat together, in public. But yeah, the just expelling wastes thing anytime is a little bit new to me. Understood, Kee'Klick Faha says. For Kee'Klick, in the open is more natural. Still, actions must fit situations, not always acceptable. Though it is, of course, appropriate to expel waste during negotiations. Alibi is confused. Why? Kee'Klick Kaifa chimes in. It is because of what we discuss. Huh? Alibi says. He can't help but ask. Is Kee'Klick Faha smiling? Politics, Faha says. Alibi grins. Oh. That was Alibi Jones in Over His Head, an audio adaptation of what was originally a comic book short story. Now, back into Alibi Jones and the Sunrise of Her, with part 2 of Chapter 14 on Glow in the Dark Radio. Alibi and the Kee'Klick spend the next week getting to know each other, laying the foundations for future trade and diplomatic ties between humankind and the Kee'Klick. There are some difficulties. Alibi has to adjust to the way the Kee'Klick evacuate their wastes in public, for example, and the Kee'Klick do not eat when or where they can be seen by others. It is taboo. But these kinds of small details are easily handled by Alibi over the course of the initial negotiations. The presence of the Greater Ta is more troublesome, ominous even, yet there is little Alibi can do. When he contacts his aunt, she tells him not to make an issue out of it. Does the SA know the Greater Ta have ships in system? Alibi asks his aunt after one of the early days in his negotiations. Brandywine didn't say anything about them being here when she sent me. Alibi sits on the bridge of his ship during a break in the proceedings, talking with Anita over an open channel. The Kee'Klick will not allow him secure communication channels.
Of course,
Anita answers in a matter-of-fact tone. They're kind of threatening.
I know,
she replies, keeping her tone even. For all their talk of the estimable order of the Greater Ta, the Kee'Klick are afraid of them. Alibi isn't able to keep his calm as easily as his aunt.
Yes, they are.
Anita's lack of emotion begins to frustrate Alibi. I didn't, he starts, almost shouting. Realizing he's louder than he meant to be, he stops himself and starts over. Why wasn't I informed they would be a presence here, to this extent?
It's hard to say,
she says. Alibi doesn't respond. Anita and Alibi stare at each other across the light years. Neither says a word for a moment. Then Alibi realizes his aunt really can't respond in any detail, and a serious look plays across his face as he begins to speak. Can't say anything more? Anita smiles.
Not really. Not on an open channel.
Alibi nods. Ah, sorry. Okay. Well, I'll do what I can.
I know, Allie. I know you will. Good luck.
Alibi shakes his head. Thanks, Aunt Anita. The Greater Ta maintain their ship's presence throughout Alibi's visit. Alibi sent a standard greeting to them on his first day in system. The Greater Ta did not respond.
In his week on Kee'ere, Alibi has not seen any of the Greater Ta under the water with the Kee'Klick. The Greater Ta seemed to be allowing Alibi to go about his business, not getting involved at all in the negotiations, which suits Alibi just fine. But the Greater Ta do finally interfere. Mere hours before the humans and the Kee'Klick are to announce an agreement to further cooperate, Alibi is called back out from his ship to meet with Kee'Klick Faha. Alibi swims up to greet the large aquatic alien at the coordinates where they've been meeting. "Hello, Kee'Klick Faha. You asked to see me?" Alibi greets the Kee'Klick. After a week with the creatures, Alibi is beginning to feel comfortable with them, beginning to feel like he knows how they think. This meeting is unexpected, however. "Hello, human Alibi Jones," the Kee'Klick responds. "I did not expect to hear from you tonight, Kee'Klick Faha," Alibi says. "I thought we were through with our meetings. I am looking forward to our signing ceremony tomorrow morning. Is there something that cannot wait?" "I am afraid there will be no signing ceremony tomorrow," Kee'Klick Faha tells Alibi, dropping a diplomatic bomb. "What?" Alibi is stunned. "But I thought..." Alibi struggles for words. "What has changed, Kee'Klick Faha?" The Kee'Klick swims a short distance away, a sign of embarrassment, if Alibi is reading it right. But Alibi is no longer sure of his abilities to read anything. "The Kee'Klick did not desire this change," Kee'Klick Faha admits. "But the Greater Ta suggest a continued dialogue would be disorderly. We are acquiescing to their desire for order."
The Greater Ta. Knew there were going to be trouble.
"I did not realize the Greater Ta were so influential with the Kee'Klick," Alibi says, but he immediately regrets it as Kee'Klick Faha swims up to look down on him, a clear sign of Kee'Klick anger and aggravation that is easy to read. "We do not discuss this," Kee'Klick Faha tells Alibi, "and our discussions are over, human Alibi Jones. You should leave Kee'ere now." "But Kee'Klick Faha, we had an agreement worked out," Alibi protests. Kee'Klick Faha turns and swims away without answering, leaving Alibi floating alone in silence. "Damn it," Alibi swears as he swims back to his cruiser. He's still fuming as he reaches the ship's bridge. "I'm calling on Anita. Maybe she can..."
"Human. Alibi Jones. This is Tagora of the Kikta, speaking for the Greater Ta."
A voice booms out across all of Alibi's cruiser's open comm channels.
"The Kee'Klick have informed you of their decision. Your presence is no longer welcome here on Kee'ere,"
the Kikta says.
"The human propensity for disorder is troubling to the Greater Ta. Your race's chaotic ways have already been a disorderly influence upon the Dakur. We do not believe it would be wise to allow you to disturb the Kee'Klick as well. To preserve order, we instruct you to remove yourself and your vessel from Kee'Klick space immediately."
Alibi warms up the cruiser's power plant while he answers Tagora of the Kikta, representing the Greater Ta. "I am preparing to leave as instructed," he tells them. "Warming up my ship's engines now."
You wannabe galactic overlizards?
"Thank you for your cooperation in the orderly annexation of Kee'Klick space,"
says the Kikta voice, speaking for the Greater Ta. "Yeah," Alibi answers.
I don't like this at all. Seems the Greater Ta is expanding its territory.
Alibi notices all the comm channels from beyond the Kee'ere system are blocked.
Right now, I can talk to the Kikta and the Kee'Klick, and no one else. Good inspiration for getting gone.
Alibi asks for formal permission to leave the planet. Kee'ere Control, this is Solar Alliance Cruiser 15B, requesting takeoff and orbital clearance.
Solar Alliance Cruiser 15B, you have your clearances for exertion. Kee'ere Control out,
the translated alien voice finishes. Alibi's cruiser rises up out of the water, breaking the surface of Kee'ere's worldwide sea. As he pilots the craft up and out of the planet's atmosphere, several triangular ships crowd the horizon. Though the ships of the Greater Ta hang and threaten, they take no action as Alibi's cruiser clears the atmosphere and heads for the transspace jump point. Alibi prepares his revised report as he flies back to Safe Mediation Corps headquarters. In light of the Greater Ta's aggressive takeover of the Kee'Klick territories, I recommend we advise Safe Central Command of the potential for further aggression from the Greater Ta, Alibi dictates. There is nothing hidden about their agenda, and they have now made it clear they possess a deep disdain for humankind.
Can't wait to hear what Brandywine has to say about this.
That was part 2 of Chapter 14 of Alibi Jones and the Sunrise of Her, and Alibi Jones in Over His Head, and part 1 of Alibi Jones and the Sunrise of Her on Glow-in-the-Dark Radio. And though the Kee'Klick can be charming in their own way, the Greater Ta are not. That didn't end as Alibi or any human might have hoped. What sort of threat does the Greater Ta actually pose to the Solar Alliance? We'll see how Alibi's assessment is received in our next chapter, Chapter 15 of Alibi Jones and the Sunrise of Her, coming up on our next episode of Glow-in-the-Dark Radio. Once again, thank you, patrons, for helping the podcast continue up through this episode 800. Learn more about becoming a patron at patreon.com/glowinthedarkradio. Well, we're into the second Alibi Jones novel, Alibi Jones and the Sunrise of Her, and deep into the Adventures of Alibi Jones Chronological Omnibus, which features all of Alibi Jones's stories in his timeline's chronological order, and features the insertion of a prose adaptation of the comic book story, Alibi Jones in Over His Head, right there in Chapter 14 of Alibi Jones and the Sunrise of Her, just as you heard it on this episode, on this 800th episode. But I was thinking, too, with Alibi Jones in Over His Head, this episode also contains a story from Alibi Jones's collected comic book short stories, The Adventures of Alibi Jones Chronological Omnibus, available digitally through drivethrugcomics.com and Amazon, and in print at indieplanet.com. That's indie with a Y, indieplanet.com. Just look for Alibi Jones. And you can even see a video adaptation of that short story with the art of Juan Carlos Quatordio from the comic on the Glow in the Dark Radio YouTube channel, the podcast's YouTube channel. Kind of a visualization of Alibi Jones in Over His Head. I put that together a couple of years ago. I'll put links in the show notes, and you'll find them also at glowinthedarkradio.substack.com. I'll do a post there with everything linked in. And that is all for this 800th episode of Glow in the Dark Radio. Thank you for coming along for the ride, and we're not stopping now, so I hope you'll stick with me. I'm your host, your writer and reader, Mike Luoma. Thank you again for listening to Glow in the Dark Radio. Glow in the Dark Radio. This podcast presentation is copyright 2025 by Michael F. Luoma and is protected under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License, CC by NC-ND 4.0. Music by Kevin MacLeod. You can find his work at incompetech.com. Mike's books are available in ebook, paperback, and audiobook, wherever you find books online. Get links and more details at glowinthedarkradio.com and mikeluoma.com. This has been a presentation of Glow in the Dark Radio.